good afternoon, a very warm welcome. I hope you enjoyed that little ditty. I always say this at our events. I know when you go to places, you don't usually get a bit of music to, announce the event, but we thought it might be interesting. And a member of our team, we had a team exercise, and they used AI tools, and we came up with this. They fed in, something which is uplifting, motivating, etc. We rarely get people jigging to it, but hopefully people, increasingly recognize that tune is associated with our events. My name is Dharmendra Kanani. I am Chief Operating Officer and Chief Spokesperson at Friends of Europe, and have the privilege and the honour to have this conversation with you in this room. I apologise for the heat, unless it's just me, but it's quite warm in this room. We'll do all we can, I know, to see if we can get some air. We meet at a very interesting time to talk about a subject matter that I think has become increasingly understood in policy terms, and its capability and its importance for all of us, whether we are policymakers, think tankers, communities consuming services, those who are trying to understand weather, trying to understand security and stability, and a whole range of other things in terms of transport, etc. People are increasingly aware and understanding the importance of space as a concern of ours, and we should give more attention to it. We are really pleased that we started this programme some 5 years ago. I think we're one of the first think tanks to have a space programme, the only one actually. And I want to thank colleagues from the European Space Agency, especially Matilda and others here, that they had the foresight. We put together a proposal, and they had the foresight to think that it's important to have a think tank associated to really proselytise and improve policy understanding of space and all things to do with space in the broadest and general's term. And we've had a good crack at it over the time in this past 4 or 5 years. I also want to welcome our live stream viewers and listeners. Thank you for joining us also. I believe the system's working, so a warm welcome to all of you. Sadly, you can't post, but you can do social media in terms of this particular debate. Colleagues, we meet at a time again where we've had a warning shot last Friday about the US's intentions on security and its view of Europe's capability and Europe's standing. We won't go into that at the moment, but I think it sets an important context more broadly about how do we make sure Europe is able to fend for itself, not necessarily become hawkish in that, because it can't really go by itself, but how does it start having relationships with powers and systems and entities that share our values and have a sense of common bond and common value, that actually this is not simply about Europe, but about the kind of society we want to both develop and our future generations to inherit. And at the moment, it doesn't feel like an easy world that we're living in, that's for sure. And I think that what we have understood since the emergence of war in our neighbourhood, space has become really important. In those early days, it was space satellite capabilities that enabled communication to happen and to make sure, a private sector player moved in, obviously, quite significantly, but we know the European Space Agency has played its part in providing covert support, but also intelligence wherever it can on the war effort. But it creates, I suppose it punctuates the point I made earlier, that space is a domain that has to become much more front and center of our thinking, from everything from what we do here with that, but to do with transport. We know right now that something like 50,000 flights were affected in the East and the Baltics because of interference with satellites and navigation. And just to put that into perspective, that's really significant. And we're seeing it every day through, if I call it special measures or specific measures from Russia and others, that it's affecting. The space domain has become highly politicized. It can be mercantile, or it can be something that we try and work through to create a governance structure that is both Europe and global, or at least partnered with people that actually understand the importance that space needs to be nurtured, have the proper guardrails, and be treated as a common good, as a public good. Unfortunately, not everyone sees it in that way. But one of the things that we want to speak to you about is, how is it that we begin to think about more in earnest the space and security dimensions that are urgent and at the heart of a public policy debate that needs to be happening. We know at the Council of Ministers, European Space Agency has had one of its largest uplifts in budget. You know, several billions more than it was previously. We also know that consumption of Earth observation has gone through the roof in terms of security, in terms of stability, and people knowing what's going on. So there's kind of a movement, but we do know is that the coordination between member states, European Commission and European Space Agency could be much better. It's not what it should be. And at the moment, just like the absence of a single market for our money and capital services, we don't have a kind of a single market approach to space. And perhaps is it time to consider that? And how do we make sure we do that? Otherwise, you're going to have multiple actors in multiple states without coordination and us not being able to really benefit from a coherent Europe-wide approach and a Europe-wide security shield up there, which is very sorely lacking. On that note, I'm going to first invite our MEP, who is thankfully being here, but also thank you for hosting us later on. I'm really pleased that you are here with us to share your views, given that you're a chair of a significant committee in the Parliament. And what's your reflection on the importance of space now? So please, if you will join me here.
Here?
You can do, absolutely.
Okay.
It's on, I think.
It's on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Good evening. Many thanks, Mr. Kanani. And thank you all speakers and participants. Today we are here to discuss about Europe's ambition in space, a sector which Letta, Draghi and Minister reports have all addressed as a key enabling factor for our economy and security. The world order has substantially changed in recent years. It is much less predictable and stable, and way more confrontational and threatening. In this scenario, Europe is forced to redefine needs and priority for its own autonomy and defense. Of this projection, space is an essential component. What has happened in these 3 years in Ukraine demonstrated that pivotal role of satellite services and connectivity. Indeed, space is no longer just a frontier to explore. It is a place of observation and interception. How to unlock Europe's ambition in space? Let's look to our competitors. The merit of the consolidation of the United States global leadership lies in the choice to treat space in an integrated strategic dimension, which holds together civil, commercial, and military, and in the size of the market and of investment. This is the way to get the maximum benefit from the relationship between public and private entities, and especially from their capacity for innovation and investment. Just think of the absolute protagonism of Starlink in orbital telecommunication, which unparalleled performance to date, which could soon expand to Earth observation. We are talking about commercial services and internet connectivity on a global scale, but current conflicts have shown us how fundamental these services are for defense purposes. As for China, the clear goal is to become the dominant power of space within the next decades. Chinese technical industrial architecture integrates space, terrestrial domain, cyberspace, and AI into a unified strategy backed by substantial resources and firm political will. While the world accelerates, Europe gives opposite signals. On the one hand, the European share of total investment for space has fallen from 15 to 10% in the last 5 years. In 2024, Europe invested 12 billion euros in public funds in space. The US, 65, China around 15, with prospects for strong growth. On the other hand, Europe remains a scientific and technological powerhouse in a leadership position for Earth observation with Copernicus, the accuracy of the satellite navigation system with Galileo, interplanetary missions to explore the cosmos with Euclid, JUICE, Rosetta, to name a few. as well as for the excellence of the onboard manufacturing technologies and for the liveliness of scientific industrial ecosystem. What are the main challenges? Europe clearly suffers from a lack of decision-making capacity and fragmented governance and resources. All actors in European space and economic arena must join forces. We need to strengthen cooperation between ESA and the EU to maximize investment effectiveness, avoiding duplication and divisions. Then, Europe must rapidly grow in terms of autonomous access to space. Ariane 6 and Vega C have given Europe back the strategic possibility of autonomous access to space. But if we are to achieve full independence, they will need to be backed up by additional rocket and launch system suppliers and backed by high operational capacity launch platform. While demand aggregation will be key to sustaining production capacity and creating the critical mass needed to assert full European autonomy in the field of launchers. Public funding is expected to grow, but will it be enough? The recent proposal of the next multi-annual financial framework includes a new European Competitiveness Fund that amounts to 451 billion euros. The ECF should operate through 4 policy windows that mirror Union's key policy priorities, including one on resilience and security, defense, industry and space, with 131 billion euros. Today, however, we don't have a standalone program for space. At the same time, ESA ministerial that took place last 26 and 27 November in Bremen gave a strong signal. Ministers from the 23 member states, associate members and cooperating states confirmed support for key science, exploration, technology programs alongside a significant increase in the budget of space application, with 22.3 billion over the next 3 years compared with the 16.9 billion of the current 3-year period. The largest part of the new budget, 4.4 billion, will go toward space transportations. Did we allow ESA to deliver on the European launcher challenge to stimulate a more competitive market for innovative launch services? But, as already said, public funding won't be enough. Bearing in mind the importance of integrating civil, commercial and military, we will need to make space attractive to private investors and create the right synergies. To conclude, I would like to briefly touch upon the EU Space Act on which I'm working as Shadow Rapporteur. The regulation is based on the 3 main pillars of safety, resilience and sustainability for all operators providing data or services in the EU. My efforts will be aimed at ensuring that this set of common rules will truly support the sector's growth and competitiveness, help its consolidation needs, and create a level playing field in the single market with the ultimate goal for the EU to play a role on the global stage, especially when it comes to influence and build common rules and standards. So many thanks again to all participants and speakers, and I wish us all a fruitful debate.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Important information, but also approach. And you refer to fragmentation and poor decision making. It's just been ever thus with whichever policy file we choose. And at one point, perhaps the adversity that's being generated from across the Atlantic might make us a bit more agile and a fleet of foot in decision making. Let's see. But we look forward to working with you because I think that as a rapporteur for a very significant piece of legislation, not that others are insignificant, but this is going to draw the narrative of security potentially and consumption over the next 15 to 20, 25 years. So we look forward to working with you in that and do whatever we can. And hopefully the people in this room can shape some of that debate with you as in your role. Colleagues, I'm now going to turn to a colleague of mine, and please do join me. You have a little booklet. It's our little booklet on space, which we're launching today. And if you don't have it, we've got some copies at the back. And Jamie Shea, who doesn't really need a lot of introduction. He's a well-known character. He was previously a senior a member of the NATO leadership team and has been a senior fellow with us for some time. And Jamie set about to meet with a range of folk in the space industry, but also policy community and elsewhere, and held a working group online to really try and get under the skin of what are the future challenges, as we say, in space security. Given his NATO background and also his understanding of security matters and defence matters, there wasn't anyone better than Jamie to be able to pull together it's a short study, but it's an important one. But I'll leave over to you to share with us what you understood and would like to communicate to this august group.
Amanda, thank you very much. Microphone on? Yep. Good evening, everybody. You know, when you go to the United States and you buy a celebrity book, it inevitably says written with Jack Smith, which means written by Jack Smith and not the alleged author. I haven't done that. It is my work. But having said that, I certainly couldn't have done it without Kairu and Maria of the Friends of Europe team, who guided me throughout the process. And also, Dharmendra, as you mentioned, the participants in our round table, the real experts in the piece, who first of all gave me the substance and then also corrected some of my misguided space ventures. So thank you to all of those. They'll see that hopefully the report also reflects their insights. The first thing, of course, is that space has been around for trillions of years. Nobody quite knows who invented it and when. We humans, of course, have only been around for a fraction of that period, less than 1 million years. I know Hollywood tried some years ago with Ursula Andress to suggest that we had been around for more than 1 million years BC. And so, frankly, except for the last 50 years of human history, we're in this incredible sort of situation that humanity has sort of looked up there with mystery at this great unknowable entity, but which had almost nothing to do with how life took place on this earth. They were two distinctly different domains. The only time I imagined that space remotely influenced sort of peasants in the Middle Ages was when Halley's Comet came by and sort of portended crop failure or that somebody was going to lose an important battle the next day. So we're really talking about a very short history here of humanity and space that largely goes back to the period after the Second World War. But in that short period of time, 5 decades, of course, everything has changed. And we're now in a situation, that's been said by you and Signore Gurri just a moment ago, where everything on Earth is being increasingly influenced, determined, controlled, conducted by and through space. The functions that we depend upon now, or that we depend on space-based assets for, seems to grow all the time. I mean, banking, finance, financial transactions, weather monitoring and forecasting, economic, agricultural and transport activities, increasingly communications, your iPhone, Dharmendra. Also, of course, observation of what's happening here on Earth, which is increasingly important to the intelligence community, as well as to open source information to check on what the intelligence community is seeing and hearing. Navigation, of course, that's the whole GPS issue that you referred to, but also data collection, accuracy of data, climate monitoring. In my own area of security, of course, early warning of military operations, including the launch of ballistic missiles, of course, and increasingly also now for resilience as well. So inevitably, I suppose my starting point, Dharmendra, was that as something becomes so important and so critical, So, unfortunately, that tendency that human beings have, particularly when they're called nation states, to interfere, to dominate, to control, to get an advantage or to disrupt, also becomes in the mix. I mean, we've had, as you know, a number of global commons over the years, whether land, sea, air, space, cyberspace, which we sort of hoped would be preserved, like the Antarctic, as a sort of space for the benefit of all humankind. But inevitably, no. All of those domains eventually become polluted with geopolitics, with military activity, with competition, with rivalry. And we are, of course, on the verge of seeing that happen to space too, as it becomes more important for nation states, economies, and security. I briefly survey the issues that we all know about: anti-satellite weapons, increasing number of countries with access to those, whether in the form of lasers and missiles, jamming, spoofing, interference, cyber disruptions. And of course, the problem with space is it's so complicated with uplinks and downlinks and ground terminals and satellites. There's a lot of attack surface that the bad guys can concentrate on. Of course, also, particularly for we Europeans, with our love of regulation and the rules-based international order, there is always the concern that when something comes across as the unregulated wild, wild west, and whereas we have an enormous number of treaties on Earth and, of course, in airspace, below space to regulate what we are doing, even if not every country respects those, of course, space is still largely a virgin area. We have the Outer Space Treaty going back to the 1960s, but clearly the regulatory side, the international law side, is struggling to catch up. But of course also, if there is more legitimate activity in space, without necessarily talking about nefarious actors, then clearly there's, like with traffic, the more cars on the road, yes, particularly without a good traffic light system, the more chance you're going to have of collisions. I was amused the other day, well, amused is probably not the right word, let me say intrigued the other day. You saw that when a Chinese shuttle which was meant to bring some Chinese astronauts back from their own space station, couldn't leave because it was hit by a piece of space debris as well. And as space becomes more congested, as more contested, we are likely to see that as well. So, first conclusion, very briefly, and I'm not claiming any originality here. My mentor Albert Camus said that man has very few original ideas, but nonetheless it deserves to be said is that if we're serious about European strategic autonomy, it has to have a space component. We have to be as autonomous in our operations and our capabilities in terms of having the assets to do what we need to do in space, as we are currently trying to develop European strategic autonomy on the ground, at sea, and in the air. Good news, and this has been pointed out already, is that Europe is already a major space player. We may be falling behind, as was said, in the overall table of investments, but we were in the game early. We have our strengths. I try to point to them in the report. Satellite design. Galileo was mentioned. At the time, a lot of people said we don't need it. We have GPS. But it took courage to push it through. And now I think that most Europeans, particularly those in the strategic area, are jolly well glad that we had the courage to actually develop that and have our own autonomous capacity. A little bit of foresight goes a long way. Copernicus, of course, the best Earth observation capability, and so on. But we also have our weaknesses, naturally, and I imagine some of the debate this evening will be focusing on that, although with those budgets going up and those capability programs now being rolled out, particularly, for example, Ariane 6, the launchers that were mentioned a moment ago, one of the participants said, no good dealing with space if you can't get into space because you don't have your own autonomous launcher capability. They are being remedied. But of course, we also see in the United States the rise of the private sector with Elon Musk and now Jeff Bezos with Blue Origin, their ability to put massive numbers of small satellites in ever larger constellations up there, their ability now to recover launchers, and this is making space cheaper and more accessible for all of us, but also, of course, with the aspect naturally too as to what degree they will then have a monopoly. Why are we Europeans, for example, in Poland and Estonia, paying for the use of Starlink to be extended to Ukraine when we should have our own autonomous capability? So, very briefly, Dharmendra, you've given me only a few minutes, and I've almost used them, as I can see from your face.
Sorry.
What I've done is to go through a number of different areas. Institutional, you mentioned that. Are we developing the right partnerships? As a Brit, I always mention the UK here, but there's Turkey, there's Japan, Canada, many other players. The procurement aspect, of course, are we able to deliver on time, on budget, and the quality we need? Commercial, we have a number of space companies, including SMEs. Are we able to create the level playing field that we require so they can all compete equally, have access to capital, for example, get their innovation to market quickly? That space ecosystem that was also mentioned in terms of skills, engineers, STEM graduates and so on, feeding into the system over the long run. And of course, mentioned too, architecture. Have we got the right sort of framework in terms of how we get the players together? Space, I think, is rather like my football team, Tottenham Hotspur. We have always great players, but we struggle to find the right combination, the right interaction, the right tactics, the right strategy on the field. And one of the senses that we always perform less than what we could do and what we should do as well. So finally, in the report, I outline areas where we could, I think, have a debate. Deterrence in space, is that a viable concept? As we look to assert our role and protect our assets. Innovation, what do we mean by it? Spiral development, constant upgrades, or more long-term planning of future systems. I mentioned the SME area, the dual use as the military dimension of space becomes more important. Do we need to introduce sort of bespoke military systems, or can we militarize the civilian systems, and how to do that so we get synergy? The integration area, the single market, and finally, coming from NATO, yes, and you mentioned it, NATO. We've depended, at least in the military domain, for so long on all of the US assets, where is now a question mark. And of course, as always, there is the question of to what extent can you continue to rely upon these existing arrangements, but to what degree can you no longer rely on them and therefore gradually have to substitute your own capabilities. But how to do this? Star Trek developed the concept of warp speed, which now applies on Earth to everything we do, but it's a space concept. And as everybody else goes at warp speed, I suppose the question I ask at the end is Europe capable of going at warp speed as well? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jamie. And sorry for giving away that look of like, hurry up and go into warp speed, only because we have such a constellation of contributors here, and I want to make sure everyone, but thank you. And if you haven't got a chance to pick it up, because it's a very good report. And I think that having spoken to the various people you have, it provides a set of conclusions, as you said, which you haven't had the time to run through, but read it as your leisure. Now, I'm going to ask our speakers to come and sit here, please, with me. We're going to take two chunks. And what I mean by that, no, please, don't be reticent, please. Sit. There is no reserved seats here. Just sit where you would like to, and I'll call upon you. What we're going to do first is take a political voice that's involved with Ukraine and EU relations. We're going to go to the agency, the European Space Agency, for a view, and then we'll move to, let's say, the European Commission. So we've kind of, this first grouping is very much about looking at the institutional, but also the political relationship with a country that's, if you like, in Ukraine, has bolstered and, really caught our attention in terms of what we need to do about security in the future, but also learn from it. So, Pekka, I'm going to come to you first, if I may, and ask you to reflect on what do you think are the most important capabilities that need to stand out where in terms of where we find ourselves in terms of space capabilities for security. Please take the mic. Thank you for joining us. It should be on.
Okay,
there you
good.
go.
Well, good evening, everybody, and great to be here. I'm really not a politician yet. I'm never. I've spent 39 years in the military, and I'm here just because of the greatest recruiter in the world, Mr. Putin, to stop him in every possible way. And space, of course, is one important domain where we have to do it. And being ex-military and ex-intel and military intelligence guy, when you look at the capabilities, most important, of course, is intelligence and situational awareness. You know, you can't fight blind. That's the fact. You know, we have to have a proper intelligence. We need to see the whole Europe. We need to see most of the Russia. We need to see Arctic, because that's more and more important area today. And because, for example, when we talk about protecting our critical infrastructure, the space is the best place to see all the infrastructure and protect it, especially undersea things. We need to have our own ballistic missile early warning capability. We have to have our own space domain awareness. And why we? Well, because I spent the last 20 years with my colleagues warning everybody that the winter will come. And nobody listened. Now everybody listens. But it's much worse winter than we expected, because we are going to be alone as Europe, because we can't trust the United States 100% anymore. Means that we have to create these capabilities, which we are now currently, most of them we are getting from the United States. So intelligence and situational awareness are most important, because they can't be replaced. Except, you know, we have to have your eyes in the space. You know, the not the final frontier, but the ultimate military high ground, and we have to be there. Then, of course, comes communication, navigation, all that. But actually, you can do a lot of, if you are defending your own area, on communications and navigations on the ground level too. But intelligence, by far, it's the most important.
Thank you very much. And thank you for being so brief and to the point. But you punctuate it. It's intelligence, and that's what's been guiding everything that's happening right now in the war, context of war. But also there's a kind of a sovereignty issue taking place between various regions as well. But we'll come back to and we'll take your views on that. I now want to go to you, Pierre. You head up the Earth observation work at European Space Agency, amongst other things. You've had a very good decision from the Council of Ministers. Tell us, what does that mean in terms of your future priorities and what it means for ESA as we move forward?
Yes, thank you. Does it work?
It does.
Good afternoon. So first, indeed, as mentioned by MEP George Logori, thank you for this. The ESA Council at ministerial level a bit more than 10 days ago was a great success. More than 22 billion euros were subscribed. And this is really a stronger political signal from the member states of ESA for space and Europe. And out of this 22 billion, we got for Earth observation 3.4 billion euros. And this includes several programs, starting with the backbone of the Earth observation program at ESA, which is called Future-EO, which has a very large scope of various types of activities, starting with the definition of the new missions, including Copernicus, but also development of Earth science missions and their operations, and what is related to the exploitation of data and development of applications, R&D on the applications, as well as new activities linked to climate, what we call climate actions, climate solutions. So it's no longer monitoring the climate, but it's also providing solutions, and this is rather ambitious. In addition to Future-EO, we got for Future-EO 1.8 billion, which was 95% of what was requested, so it's a great achievement. In addition, we had at a rather smaller scale InCubed, which is a small program fostering a commercial perspective with a co-funding mechanism, and also the DT, which is digital twins of the Earth, which is a key activity to valorize our data. We had also, as a major program, Copernicus space component, the segment for phase 3, which was very well subscribed. We have 2 new missions that we start to develop, and we expect the second, let's say, part of the funding from the next MFF in agreement with our colleagues at the European Commission. And last but not least, and this is fully in line with what was said already in various statements in introductions, we have this new program called ERS, which is European Resilience from Space, which is quite new for ESA. It came quite late in the process of the ministerial, but there was a strong push from our Director General, from some ESA member states to have this program, and at the end we got another subscription on this program as well. So our priorities, as requested, considering these excellent results in the various domains, actually we will run simultaneously the strengthening of science activities, but also address climate, environmental and sustainability challenges, foster competitiveness, support policy implementation at global scale, and also initiate these new activities in the domain of security and resilience.
Okay, a final point, but for you to be really brief on this, because we heard from Giorgio the fact that, you know, slow decision-making, fragmentation, we're missing an opportunity. Will Europe behave like an actor and a leader on, you know, space? Will it simply still be fragmented and respond? My point here is that what efforts will you make together with the Union to build capability on Earth observation?
Yeah, so here we talk about maybe the perspective of the next MFF, where we have been working very closely with the European Commission, in particular on the Copernicus Programme. We have been a partner of the European Commission since many years on Copernicus, starting with GMES, then renamed Copernicus. And while Copernicus is really important, in short, Copernicus is not only essential to deliver operational services in the domain of atmosphere, climate, marine, land, emergency and security, but it's also supporting largely science activities, competitiveness, climate action, sustainability, and to strengthen Europe's strategic autonomy. There are many concrete examples brought by the program. It's difficult to list them, of course, but regarding the next MFF...
Yes, turning to my central point, how do you make sure we get greater coordination or a linking of capabilities so that we improve?
Yeah, so we are working since many years, I was saying, with the European Commission, and on the Copernicus Programme, we work on the so-called long-term scenario. And since on either side we have ministerial council every 3 years, on the EU side, as you very well know, the funding period is 7 years. We need to very well coordinate, avoid duplication and so on. So we basically share the activities and we plan long-term and non-time in advance the let's say, respective activities. For the next MFF, we expect from on Copernicus major funding to sustain the program, to enlarge it. In particular, we need funding to develop the next generation missions, and it's co-funded between ESA and the European Union. Okay. So on the side, we start the procurement, and then it will be complemented by the funding from the EU. We expect to launch to get the funding of 18 different Sentinels. Also, we need to operate many new missions. We go from 6 family of Copernicus missions to 12 families. We need to operate them, and also to continue the access to commercial missions, what we call the contributing missions. And there is a second part where we have starting a new cooperations with the commissions, is to prepare the EOGS, Earth Observation Governance Service of the EU. And this is very well linked to the so-called ERS-EO, the program I mentioned. And we have started to create a task force on that, because ERS-EO is aimed at performing some preparatory activities for the future EU EOGS. Okay. So we need to really work together on that. We have also got an exchange of letters, formal letters at director level. We are starting this process with our colleague at the Commission.
Okay, no, thank you very much for that. I'm not sure we got to the hub of it, but I'm not sure that you can answer that question that I'm asking you, because it might be to do with the direction of travel at the most senior level, which is not to deny your role, but there is something about strategic direction setting, about partnership, but I will come back to that in a moment. Mara, I want to come to you, if I may. Go to the DIFIS, you're in senior position there. What should policymakers, because you are in a key role in terms of this new kind of structure that you have there, you have a commissioner that's dealing with defence, how secure, space fits within that, but what should policymakers be anticipating in terms of the evolving ecology around space and Earth observation?
Yes, so thank you very much. So good evening, everyone. You spoke about ecosystem before. Actually, it's a system where we have many actors. It was a very good question how these all actors can work together. I will try to come back later to that. I don't know if I will answer to that completely, but I will try for that. So ecosystem, because we are speaking about the institutions, we are speaking about space agencies, European, national, we are speaking about industry, we are speaking about the users, because the users are becoming more and more part of the ecosystem. And when we speak about users, it's not just space experts. I mean, the users now are everyone. I think this is the success of space today. It's not space for space, but space for the Earth. And I'm speaking clearly for navigation, for communication. I'm working for Earth observation since several years, being in charge of Copernicus. But we see that actually putting all these entities together is very important. So what is in front of us and where we have decisions to be taken? So what can we anticipate as policymakers? For sure, there are needs that have to be responded. I remember when we started 10 years ago, or even before, with GMES and then Copernicus, we presented Earth observation, and I remember going to my peers in other DGs saying, you know how beautiful it is, Earth observation, you can use it. Honestly, they look to me, okay, thank you, we'll let you know.
We know that feeling when we started the program with Lisa 5 years ago, yeah.
But you know, today is exactly the opposite. They are drafting new regulations and they're calling me or my colleagues and saying, how can we introduce space into the regulation? So I think the change, I would say in French, the déclic has come in place, and so now actually space is really at the service. And so this is the reason why there are new sentinels that we are designing in order to respond to new needs. One particular one is the CO2 mission that will observe anthropogenic emissions, that will observe how this is impact climate change. So new needs for sure is something that we have to look after, but among the new needs, as it has been already said by many, is the dual use shift. Maybe we didn't anticipate that early enough. I think in the end, the war in Ukraine pushed a lot for that. And so already many of you mentioned the EOGS, the governmental service. We are working on that. We have actually to do that very quickly. I mean, we have to catch up the time that maybe we should have anticipated in the past. But I have to say defense, when we were speaking about the defense domain in the US, was a kind of a word that you couldn't use too much. Today, I think everyone is using security, defense, and indeed EOGS is part of that, and we have really to deliver in order to support that. So we said user needs, we said dual use, other part, how to boost industry, commercialization, and everything is about that. So it's not by chance that space and defense are in the competitiveness fund, because everything that is done in that respect is really as the objective really to push the competitiveness of the sector, also through the climate transition, through the digital aspects. But so we have really to think how our industry in Europe can become competitive. And I think we have a lot to do. But there are areas, and Earth observation is one of these, but navigation as well, where we are quite strong, but we have to remain strong in that respect. And then I think, as was mentioned before, is the Space Act. And you said a word that was very nice. It was about single market. Indeed, I think the Space Act will help also for the Space Act. We have to be more secure, resilient, sustainable in that respect, and to push for that.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to gallop a bit because I'm running out of time. And that's great what you've set out, but answer that question if you can, or is it at commissioner level and at executive director of the ESA level to say how do you enable greater coherence? Because what George was saying is what we've got, and what both of you have described could lead to more fragmentation if you don't put elements of conditionality in some of the contracts to work together, or create, security by design into some of these systems. But, people will rue the day if we don't think about a common front on space.
I try to reply to your question.
Okay.
So I give you maybe two examples, one from the past and one for the future, for the preparation. The past is Copernicus. Copernicus is clearly an example how we could really cooperate together. I think no single member state would have done that alone.
No.
And the European Space Agency has been very at the starting point for that, but we cooperate together. From the technological point of view, our side was more on the user requirements. We put together the energies, and I don't know if everyone knows, but actually the funding is shared. There are parts of the funding that are made by European Space Agency, part of us is delegated to Space Agency. So there is a coherence of financing in that respect. And member states really push for that because we don't want duplications. We want actually that is the best use of the financing for some objectives. So I think that for Copernicus, indeed, everything can be done better, but I think we have been quite successful. The future is about EOGS. So how do we draft the governmental service? It started as an initiative, political initiative strategy from the European Union. It was for the first time indicated in the Space Strategy for Security and Defense. Now it's also indicated in the Defense Agenda 2030 as a space shield. When I think these words are coming to everyone. So we said we had really to put in place a system that actually comes to Earth observation for Europe quite fast. We can start from commercial capacity, national capacities, and we are already speaking with national capacity, with commercial actors, how to bring together what they're already doing. Where ESA is coming from? Maybe what is there is not sufficient. We have to design something to fill the gaps.
Okay.
And who is better placed than ESA to do that? And for this reason, when they came with the ERS, we said, okay, Pierre, actually I see Pierre more often than my family and my wife sometimes, just to show that how much we interact.
Okay.
We said, okay, we are interested to work with you, but only if ERS is designed to serve what the users need. And this is how we are targeting that. It's quite clear, and I think we hope it will work, but I think the reality check will be in 1 or 2 years.
Absolutely, but I don't think we've got 1 or 2 years, that's all. I mean, given what's going on at the moment, I don't think the population in Europe will forgive us for not actually getting our acts together and saying, given what's happening with satellite, let's say penetration or basically disrupting flights and everything else in Europe in terms of our ways of life, that if we don't have an early warning European system amongst member states to say, this is happening, let's get our acts together, the game's a bogey. I thank you very much. I want to bring you in, please, if I may now. Burning questions, gentlemen there. And I know you haven't put your hand up, sir, but I have to ask you to come in to a certain extent, if you have a view. If you don't, it's not a problem. No? Okay, fine. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Chairman. My view is known a lot of years here. It's the same...
Introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, Michaelos Karlaftis, Epoch Advisors, who represent the Uranian Heliospace and Defense Group, a group which supports the creation of the European Defense Community according to the Treaty of 1954, another entity from the European Union. And we are going very well, I have to tell you. So about the space, I'm speaking a lot of years here, the last 20 years, and the narrative hasn't changed at all, for Europe at least. Because we are working for not an autonomous Europe, but for an independent Europe, except if you mean autonomous with an ancient Greek origin name. So the independent Euro should have only one origin, which the others, the Chinese, the Indians, and the Russians, they have it, Mars. Mars will give to the Earthian economic communities and the citizens the solution for all our problems. They know this, the Americans, and we are speaking still for observation, for the observation in Earth. Anyhow, about the defense, you have to know that from 60s, the Soviets and now the Russians, they have a better system than the Americans, Star Trek system with lasers. And we don't speak at all here. In Europe, we are still on the conservation things of Copernicus and the money the citizens have to pay on Copernicus without getting money from Copernicus, as I'm proposing the last 15 years.
But sir, if I may, I need you to conclude. What's your main point?
The main point is that we have to change the narrative. And there are not only the Americans, the competitors, there are the Chinese, very good, excellent. The Indians, they don't invest a lot. And the Russians, which we don't know anything about them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Who else? Don't look down. You're not going to get this time of your life back, right? So rather than being a voyeur or a passenger, communicate. I shouldn't catch your eye. I've caught your eye. You don't want to speak. Will you speak? Please. Can we get a mic over here? Gentleman here. You're all very, very quiet. Please introduce yourself.
Cecilia May from SES. we don't have a lot of activity today on Earth observation, but we know that things are moving in a direction that where we see a lot of opportunity as a commercial player. And I think based on what you expressed, I think it's absolutely essential to have a European ecosystem. So we need to have a program or an initiative that puts together the European interest into observation together. I don't want to open a big discussion and box on this. I don't pretend also that it needs to be something big and giant and again complicated, but I think we need to put our acts together to have a European initiative. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Pekka, you wanted to come back immediately in response to some of the points, or? Please, did I bring in someone else?
Well, actually, to the previous gentleman, we have to remember that our adversaries are not stupid. Russians are evil, but they're not stupid. And they know the meaning and importance of space. So if you are sitting on critical capabilities, you are a critical target. So we all know that they have created satellites and missiles, cyber capabilities, ground-based laser systems, etc. But they also targeting our platforms, our people, our industry. You are all the targets. You've been targets for a decade and more, and they have plans to take you down. So in order to safeguard what we have, we need the defensive capabilities up there, but we need defensive capabilities down here to security, redundancy, dispersal of our capabilities, etc., etc. And this is a serious thing which very few people think about it, because we barely have enough money to put up what we want, and then starting to make it actually survivable in time of crisis, well, that will cost a lot more.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to bring a reluctant chap here at the front. He's one of our European young leaders. And, not to spare his blushes, you discovered a star or something, didn't you? For which you got a significant award. So he is, both looks into the stars, finds them, and now you're doing something else. But reflect on this discussion, would you? Because you've come from the outside as someone in the community. You've done the actual finding of stars, and now you're here.
Planets.
Planets.
Yes. Exoplanets, very exciting. Yeah. So about the excitement, I think there's an important point here that...
Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Guillem Anglada-Escudé. I'm an astrophysicist. I work at the European Research Council these days for other reasons. It doesn't matter. But but I think the inspiration is very important. The Americans are much better than us. We know that from the Hollywood movies from the last 4 decades, but this is not a movie. We see the rockets landing, we see the rockets going out, we see the Starlink traces overnight, which looks like Star Wars if you have seen them. It's very impressive. You feel like, oh, something is happening up there, right? And we are not managing to do that. We are not. There was mention of the gentleman about a base on Mars, a base on the Moon. We don't have a European project for a lunar base. That's very sad. That's very sad. Maybe we may not succeed completely, but we should be planning for a mega rocket to put something on the Moon. Doesn't matter if we think it's not viable. It's happening. It's happening in other places, right? We have to tell this because the people don't understand this. I understand Europe is complicated and we have to have all this complication to be sure that we do things right, but we need a bit more. The narrative has to be a bit different to engage people, and then the private sector gets engaged as well. These are people, they are excited as well.
And it's also about bringing people like you, who's an astrophysicist. Oh, sorry, you discovered a planet, not a star. But you've done something really significant. But you have that kind of capability. How do you kind of spread that and bring a lot more like you, because there are more like you, but also the private sector? Thank you for your contribution, gentlemen here. Then I'll go back to over there. So please introduce yourself.
Hello, so my name is Christian Bulmak. I work in the European Parliament. And my question is on governance, because as far as I know, the ESA Charter says you are a peaceful organization, not a defense one. As far as I know, the Commission doesn't have an army. So the European Union in itself is not exactly acting in the military field, which defense also includes that. So how would you treat this governance problem? What do we lack to act together, as you say, in order to increase our resilience, both in defense and in other areas?
What's your view? So you've obviously raising this point as, it's not there's no competency for this from your perspective. So what would you like to see happen?
Well, actually, I would like to identify where we have the problems in cooperating and what can we fix in that. What are our gaps?
All right, thank you. Final one here, please. Introduce yourself, please.
Thank you so much, Dharmendra. Reza Zenjo Ferali. I have 5 law degrees. I have a startup in the space sector in Luxembourg. The name of the startup is No Hunger. Just an insight. According to the UN, by 2050, there's going to be 800 million climate refugees. According to Zurich Insurance Group, better at maths, 1.2 billion. 2 years back, illegal immigrants coming to the EU, a bit less than 300,000, already creating a global mess. And regarding dual use, indeed, space overlaps with defense, overlaps with climate. One is intertwined with the other, and indeed, a lot of technologies are dual use. In fact, the best technologies very often are either space or defense. They all work hand in hand with each other. The issue is that regarding funding space, small scoop for you, I have a case right now running against the Ministry of Economy of Luxembourg because for 4 years they've been waging a war against me, my crime. I would bring in billions of euros of investments into space technologies that are relevant for climate, the origin of those funds, the money of the Islamic world, institutional money, hydrocarbon money.
Sure, Baruza, I take your point, but this isn't a forum for airing that. What I want you to focus on is what do you think needs to be done?
What needs to be done is that civilian space needs to be funded by everyday persons. So you have to be able to channel the billions in savings accounts towards entrepreneurship and innovation, innovative technologies, but mostly coming from entrepreneurial companies in Europe.
So spread the kind of sector and the market for engagement.
Solve the scale-up dilemma for tech companies in Europe.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, please do. Very briefly, I think it's right. No, it's not behind me. Very briefly.
Very briefly, just to react to one of the aspects of your questions before regarding is ESA entitled or has ESA the mandate to work on security defense matters. We have a convention that does not prevent working on defense matters, but at the last ministerial council 10 days ago, there was a resolution which was approved at unanimity by all ESA member states, where ESA now has a mandate to work on defense and security matters. So, and regarding the overall governance aspect, as you know, ESA is not like the Commission. ESA is an intergovernmental organization, so at the end, the governance will be more with the Commission and with member states, but we are basically a technical agency.
That answers your question, at least for the European Space Agency. European Commission, we can come back to that another time. I'll come back to you, okay? Because I've got less than 15 minutes and I've got 3 other folk I really want to take on board. Andrew, please, I'm going to collapse what I want to ask you on the question of data, right? Earth observation creates so much data, right? That across all kind of social, societal, services, goods, etc., and movements. What's your sense of the implications of AI for that data?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, as you say, I think we start in a good place in Europe, actually. We talk about the challenges, but actually, whether it's the sort of Met services and their warnings, the Copernicus services, I think we do a good job of using data for many, many sectors and to keep people safe. There's a revolution going on at the moment in weather and climate prediction with AI, and very understandably, we're getting asked a lot by the space agencies, what does this mean?
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes AI, it feels like it's magic and it can do stuff out of nothing, and you're always amazed by it. But actually, it can't do something out of absolutely nothing. So actually, the requirement for EO data, I think is as large as it was. The AI is an enabler to extract even more value. Now, at a more detailed level, it may change the balances of exactly what are the most important investments. But yeah, even AI doesn't give you something for nothing. So the sort of that EO bedrock that goes into the training that helps us make the weather and climate predictions better. I think the need there remains as strong as ever.
But it's not safe, is it? Is there a kind of, or is it? Because everyone can access that data, so you can imagine a malign force using that data, pushing it into a, LLM and creating stuff, right?
I mean, in a sense, the data and the tools are there. I mean, weather forecasting, climate prediction. In a sense, we can validate it. There are standards and comparisons of what it does. I think I less see the risks actually in the EO exploitation field than in some other areas of AI. But obviously, we have
and from your perspective, what kind of things do we need to be thinking about in terms of AI? Because we're going to have a Space Act, right? Yeah. So here's a key rapporteur here. What would you like him to be thinking about in relation to AI? Sorry, I put you on the spot. But you can do this afterwards as well.
I think it's probably more at the balance of investments level. Things like, actually, AI is really fast. It might be able to use more varied sources of data, so the exact balances of what we invest in may change to be optimal. The importance of the ground links, getting this data quickly, becomes even more important. Those sorts of issues.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much for being, brief and to the point. Emmanuel, I want to come to you, industry perspective, if I may. What do you make of all of this from an industry perspective, and what role can you play in perhaps helping the ecology come together more, but also play a bigger part in shaping the policy dimensions of this as well?
Thank you. I think first we need to acknowledge that we saw over the last few years a drastic evolution of the ecosystem we evolved in, and it's a collective success first. ESA, European Commission, researchers, and the private sector. We can see as well that a lot of companies evolve, no more in the downstream, for example, on our part, but are manufacturing and are transforming this information into services and products. So we can see this verticalization, and we can see that a lot of companies currently change. They are no more data providers, they are no more service providers, so it's changing. And when we look at the security market, for example, we see that it represents currently about 20% of the market. So the Earth observation industry is already really present and really strong in this, and we have a lot of capabilities. And to resonate with what had been said before, I think what we should pay attention to is to not only capitalize on what has been done by historic actors, but to better understand what currently are the new capabilities. The new capabilities which emerge thanks to new processing capabilities on one hand, yes, for sure. For example, on-board processing to reduce the latency between acquisition and delivery to the user. In terms of sensors, for example, recently we have new capabilities about thermal, about hyperspectral as well. This brings completely new capabilities for the users. So we made a booklet of services, for example, recently, and we asked our members, how do you contribute? Can you contribute to security and defense? And we receive a lot of information. This booklet is available on the Earth website for information. It's for free as well. Do not hesitate. And I think we need to play a role there. There is a lot of companies who are not initially in security and defense, but they have capabilities to inject, to share. So we need to develop this trust. We need to establish the good framework, the dual use aspect, in order to make sure that these capabilities can be provided to the users, security and defense, and so to involve more actors in this play.
You know, in terms of what's going on at the moment with kind of specific or active measures from Russia and elsewhere, we know that, remote sensing is really important in terms of, it needs to be a new capability on another level. Is that your view? And in terms of what should be done? Is there a sense of, do you have a sense of urgency, or the fact that policymakers are not really thinking about the fact that sensor technology in particular should be at the forefront, because it's the kind of front shield, if you like?
I have the feeling, to say differently, that we are focusing a lot currently on the infrastructure, on the satellite. Okay. And we should think much more first on the service, on the product, on the information to involve. And for example, in the ERS, currently, there is no specific line for the services. It is something that is done by the European Commission. So we think that the industry should be really well more connected with the entities in charge of this, in order to make sure that the knowledge is well shared, accessible to all, in order to build the future.
Because that's where the innovation, creativity that others have been talking about, is that on sensor technology, you can see that it could go wild. But if untamed or not put to good use in security, we're losing, aren't we? Am I putting words in your mouth? What I'm trying to say is that what would you want to communicate to this community and policymakers about the importance of sensor and sensor technology and remote sensing technology?
We need to rely on Copernicus. We need to rely on commercial data in order to make sure that we really exploit all the capabilities. It's not about R&D. It's about commercial. It's about operational things that currently exist and could be developed in order to make sure that this is available to all the users in security and defense.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Last but not least, on an almost mantle, I have to say, I do apologise, and you weren't brought in just to stop it being a mantle, it's because of what you do. Roya, you bring in a very specific perspective in comparison to all the others. You understand locality, you know what people are doing in regions and in local spaces of Europe. What's your reaction to what's been happening, and what, in terms of security in particular, address that question, because security starts on the ground and in the front door, if you like, and on the front step. What's your reaction?
Yes, and for those ones who don't know me, yes. I represent a European network of regions. That's the level next to the national state. Speaking about resilience, it starts at society, and the regional local level is the closest level to the citizen. And compared to the other speakers, when you speak about regions, it's an ecosystem. It's the togetherness of economic players, research, administration, and political level. And speaking about resilience, we think we need a new approach on dual use. Okay. We need in Europe, I thank Member Gori for his work in the Parliament, and I follow your work for the legislation. And you mentioned European scientific and technological excellence, and this is what we build on. And as for regions, our universities and research center play a crucial role. And the current dual-use laws in many European countries are very strict. When we see now the budget proposal from the Commission, when we see the new competitiveness fund, it's fantastic how much new resources we will get, but we have space and defense in one line. And please be aware that a lot of excellent researchers are excluded in academia because they per law cannot bid into cluster 3, or they cannot bid into any other activity that has a linkage to safety and security.
Okay, but that's about access to funding. What about actual capability, connections and coherence between a regional or local level to, let's say, Europe-wide level? Is that happening? Is that funding related?
Both. It has to. If we look at the situation in Europe, we are talking about hybrid threat.
Yeah.
I don't think there are tanks immediately coming. It's hybrid threat. And one thing we have to look at is that the civil systems, that our civil value chain, that our food production, that our drinking water production, civil transport systems are well secured, that we use our capabilities to well secure them, and that's where we have to work on. And I see we had also talks with NATO. They are very much interested in building up at the local regional level the SNME capabilities for defense. Most regions will tell you they don't have yet the capabilities. No. We will have for the next 10 years to build them. And I think we have to do it really with a new approach to dual use, to connecting civil and safety security.
What would you like to see happen specifically? Because if we go back to colleagues, okay, there's an outgoing report on what happened in Spain and Portugal with the outage, right? But we're seeing actions on airports and other areas. So there's a thing about hybrid threats that's happening, and cybersecurity is becoming even more insecure. And what's clear is, even at a member state level, but actually at a city level where the target is going to be the highest, there's a sense there's not enough scenario planning or coordination or even the wherewithal to know what to do. Would you agree with that?
Yes, definitely.
And how do we change that?
A new approach to dual use.
Okay. But what does that mean in practice?
A dual use, looking that both sectors cross-fertilize and both sectors are connected, and that technologies used and developed for defense sector are also looked what could be their use or their benefits in the civil sector and vice versa.
Okay. Great, thank you very much. But it's clear there's an urgent priority there that's missing or not attended in terms of bringing mayors, CEOs of municipalities and private sector together to really do some scenario planning. What if Brussels got hit in the centre in terms of what happened to water, electricity, etc.? Would they have a clue? Do they have a plan in place? My sense is it's not. Colleagues, I have a few minutes left to conclude. Sir, you would like to speak? Gentleman at the front. Thank you. I didn't see you there. I'll bring you two. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Zheng Yu. I'm from the Mission of China to the European Union. I hope I'm not the elephant in the room.
You must almost often feel like that, right? I know. Yeah. Okay, go on.
Okay, so I just, thank you. I just got one suggestion for my colleagues from the European space authorities and industries. That is the revitalization and enlargement of EU-China space cooperation. Even under today's geopolitical context, we still have brilliant examples of cooperation. For example, the SMILE project.
People are smiling and saying yes, so obviously there's an agreement with that. Go on, carry on. What more? So what would you like to see happen?
Yes, and also like the Panda project and also the payload, the experimental payload of Chinese space space station are open to the whole world, and a lot of European countries have to get involved. So my suggestion would be simple just to enlarge this cooperation. You see, I'm from the Mission of China to the European Union.
Thank you. So well documented, publicly noted, but you know the elephant in the room is trust.
Yes, of course.
That's the issue.
Yes.
And I think both sides are going to have to really think through heavily how to cooperate and... cooperate and communicate, because space is without political border. We know that. And malevolent actors will act if we don't get our acts together in cooperating with each other. Lady at the back, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Charlotte Poll. I work in the European Commission, not at all on space policy. So
where do you work then?
In the DG for International Partnerships.
Excellent. Builds nicely on that point just now. No, I'm being funny, I promise.
But I wanted to ask actually about another dimension, another sector that I think should fit into Europe's ambition in space, and that's space mining. And I mean, it was mentioned in our latest strategic foresight report. It's also mentioned in the European space economy strategies or communication. So basically, just to get the insight.
What would you like to see happen? What's your view? What's the view from the the place you're working from?
We don't work on this almost at all, but in general. The view that I'm coming from is from more our work on critical raw materials in general. Obviously, the EU is facing huge dependencies.
Indeed.
We're trying to diversify our partnerships. I mean, in DG INDPA, that's what we're working on, building partnerships around the world to secure the EU supply. But I mean, space mining was mentioned in
highly
the
controversial
report. Yes,
also?
Indeed. Huge challenges, economic viability, but regulatory framework as well, etc.
Okay.
So is it feasible? Do we have are we in the EU in a position there to do anything about it?
Great, thank you very much. Firstly, I'm going to ask yourself, Mauro, because I didn't give you the opportunity to respond to the issue of competence. And if you want to make a reference to, could you just pass him the mic? Briefly, if you've got to respond to any of the points, but very briefly as we conclude.
Very briefly, I think it's a good point. Why do we do defense? I would have thought that this question was perfectly fit 2-3 years ago. I think we have a defense commissioner, we have a defense omnibus, we have many other activities. And what we are doing is not to create a military commission. It's really to support the member states. Everything is just for the member states. It's not for the commission at all. And concerning ESA, indeed, we are trusting them to develop the systems, but there is a clear understanding. As soon as they become operational, they are handed over to the operators that are dealing in military. And just behind you, there is the SATSEN colleagues to whom we would like really to trust the EOGS. I know that my answer might be a little bit a grey answer, but I think we have to be ambitious in that direction.
Indeed, and no one predicted a war. Okay, our intelligence service told us they might be doing this, but we sort of had head in, sand. But I suppose not to append your answer, at some point force majeure as a concept has to define what we do. What we do with Russian assets, what we do with a whole range of things. We didn't expect this to happen. And force majeure is a very good legal concept for doing a number of things, which was using COVID, don't forget. Joint procurement, do you remember that? And money markets didn't have the competence, the EU, but it did it. So in response to this epidemic. Any other comments regarding mining? Do you want to, any of you want to say anything about mining? No. Oh gosh, look at that. No, don't be sorry. I think it's a PS to the MEP and other people around this room that let's look at mining, because you're raising a good point that there's many people who say that the space has a great deal of bounty that can be put to use in a good way if we actually plan for it. But at the moment, we seem to be looking here rather than over there. And if we did, we might be thinking that through. I'm going to close off. Is it a really important point? Okay, go on then.
No, just to clarify also because we talk about ESA. In practice, ESA is managing the program, but most of the money goes to the industry. Yeah? So we put industry in competition, and this is not necessarily known to the people. At the end, 85 to 90% go back to industry when we develop missions.
No,
just for information, because we talk also the industrial policy.
Sure. I suppose that what's in people's minds, or in my mind, is that how do you make sure that competition has a social purpose? And that social purpose is creating peace and stability and having the capability to defend ourselves, but also preempt future things that are happening so that we have a marketplace that is coordinated. And one of the lessons we've learned, and I know Jamie doesn't make reference in his comment, but it's in there in the book, is one of the lessons we've learned about the slow creep of, let's say, a market approach to defence is the lack of interoperability. So, folks, military people in France can't fly a plane from Italy, etc. And one of the lessons, as surely it has to be for space development, is interoperability. So Europe can be safe and able to work across either from Portugal through to Greece or wherever. Colleagues, that's all I have time for. I have to finish off. Thank you all for being generous with your time and patient and dealing with this hot weather. I do apologise, but keep an eye on our website because I think this is our last event of the year. So you've been to our last event of the year. There will be something, but building on what you were saying, Pekka, just give you a kind of early warning, if you like. Look on our website on Thursday because we're putting out a warning shot, developed by experts from the security field. But keep an eye out for it because of what we're saying in response to very much, Pekka, what you've been talking about. But I'll leave you with that only. And thank you very much for supporting the work of Friends of Europe over the time that you've been here. I know some regular faces here. And if it's the first time, come back again. Take care, take a booklet, and see you all very soon. And have a lovely evening. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.